It took me a while to finally watch Anora, the now 97th winner of Best Picture. There was enormous hype for the movie coming out of Cannes Film Festival, where it also won the top prize, but after seeing some promotional images, I had a preconceived notion of what Anora would be. It was going to be star-crossed lovers in the modern, hyper-materialist context, very well directed and acted, but ultimately hollow. And for the vast majority of Anora, it seemed like my preconceived notions were largely correct. It is very well directed and acted, there's explosive drama, more comedy than I expected, but I didn't foresee an ending message more than these violent delights have violent ends. But Anora does something extremely interesting in the final 10 minutes. Sean Baker and the lead actress, Mikey Madison, have not publicly pronounced the ending's intention. They've left it up to the viewer to have their own interpretation, so I thought I would give mine in this video and explain why I think it's fantastic. When it comes to Anora, there aren't many surprising characters. You have some loudmouth strippers, incompetent henchmen, arrogant rich kids who play video games, and unforgiving parents. Vanya's mom is fantastic, by the way. And for most of the film, the title character could fit into that box. Toros actually brings up how cliche she is. Cliche she is. Yeah, he actually brings up how cliche she is on paper to dissuade her from fighting the annulment. She's a temptress who took advantage of a naive, wealthy young man so she could live the high life. And she does not do herself many favors. 3 carats minimum, she tells Vanya. But Annie receives the ring of her dreams only for Vanya's parents to demand its removal. And it's at this point we meet Igor, whose relationship with Annie gets off to a rocky start. Igor defies expectations. Upon first glance, you judge him as the stereotypical Russian muscle who's aggressive and unfeeling. The other characters think he's a gopnik, Annie thinks he's a drug dealer, but he's a more complicated figure who acts as the foil to Vanya. Vanya is as sure of himself as one can be. Too much so. Igor is a pretty awkward dude. There's a great scene where Annie is trying to get to her room and Igor is in her way and he bumbles around for a few seconds. He does a lot of that, and his eyes are also constantly on the floor. He's capable, but there's not much aura. His greatest quality is that he's perceptive. He's able to recognize an aspect of Annie that the others cannot see because she does not want to see it herself. And there are a few moments in the movie where we, the audience, see something more than what she wants to present. She is very difficult to sympathize with by design. One flash is when she says that she wants to go to Disney World for her honeymoon because it's been a dream since her childhood. You would not expect that from Annie, but it shows her hidden yearning for a Cinderella relationship, something real and authentic, not transactional. This yearning is at the core of her delusion in regards to her marriage with Vanya. She wants to parade his commitment around as proof of her value that she doubts herself. That's the ring. She does not expect to get it from him, but once she does, she cannot let it go. Toros, Garnick, Vanya's parents, and eventually Vanya himself are driven crazy by her refusal to let it go. The only person who isn't is Igor. There are many shots of Igor either observing Annie or just taking in the collapse of her life. It's how you can tell he's going to be important to the story. But the point is to show that he's able to identify that there's something more to this girl. As the other characters try to fix the mess that she and Vanya made, Igor is the only one who tries to improve her mood, which usually just pisses her off even more, but that does not discourage him, and eventually she notices. That brings us to the ending. Incredible few scenes here. The annulment is complete, Vanya is back in Russia, and Annie's last night in paradise is with Igor. Now, by this point, she suspects that Igor is actually different and has real sympathy for her, and this makes her extremely uncomfortable. So, for every nice little moment they share, Annie feels the need to cut it off by saying something completely horrible. The final example, and the most vicious, being, "I think you wanted to rape me yesterday." But Igor doesn't take her insult seriously because he understands where they're coming from. And in her own way, she tries to make amends by giving him a blanket as he gave her the scarf earlier in the movie. That's the most she can manage. Before we move on to the car scene, it's worth noting a couple of lines during this scene. Igor says that a name's value comes from its meaning. And he says that in America, we don't give meaning to names. Also, when they debate the definition of assault, Igor says that the reason she has bruises is because she has sensitive skin. So Annie gets her money and Igor takes her back home. Now, she's in no rush to leave the car of the man she supposedly thinks is a rapist. She seems to be waiting for something to happen, but doesn't know exactly what. The what ends up being the return of the ring. Igor knows what she wanted the ring to represent, so aside from the monetary value, I think he wants her to have it as a symbol of hope. The others laughed at the idea of her being worthy of the ring and the lifelong commitment it represents because of her past. But Igor doesn't want her to believe them. Annie is extremely moved by the gift, but she doesn't know how to respond. Just like the night before, her first instinct is to insult Igor, this time his car is a victim. His response to her is, "It's my grandmother's car." And that is the final line of the film. Now, Annie doesn't reciprocate Igor's kindness towards her with heart-to-heart emotional vulnerability. Her default emotional expression is sex, so that's what she initiates. When Igor tries to up the intimacy and kiss her, like an allergic reaction, she fights back. But the short battle ends with her sobbing in his arms, and that's the movie. We don't see the real Anora until the final shot. And that's the genius of it. The tears confirm Igor's idea about her. This is not a completely vain, obnoxious girl who sets out to manipulate people. This is a damaged girl who never knew her father and is hostile out of fear of emotional connection. And sex work is the ultimate retreat from emotional connection by its nature. It's about satisfying purely physical desire. That is the tragedy of the character. What she wants terrifies her, so she puts herself in an empty box to avoid it. I believe she begins to cry because she finally recognizes her own fear and the pain it's caused, all because Igor sees that hidden side and allows her to release it. As he tells her, "I like Anora more than Annie." I've seen some people say that the movie glorifies her lifestyle, which I would disagree with. I don't think the story seeks to judge or promote that life. What it wants to show is that even people who appear to live up to the cliche of that world are more complex than it seems. And sometimes you need to treat people better than they treat you or themselves to help bring that truth to light. As Orwell writes in 1984, perhaps one does not want to be loved so much as understood. But that is my take, guys. If you have your own, feel free to leave them in the comments. 2024 wasn't a great year for movies, but Anora did make me think for a long time, which does not happen often, so I was glad to see it win Best Picture, though I wouldn't say it's a top-tier movie. It's a very unique, good movie. And if you want more videos like this in the future, make sure to subscribe on your way out. And big thanks to all current subscribers for getting me past 100K recently. That was a huge goal of mine, and I greatly appreciate it. Take care, guys.